Hello, this is Liberty Mark 222. I've been talking about the church and the structure of the church and my vision of the church. I talked about the foundation of the church, which rests upon the rock, which is Jesus Christ. And now I want to talk about the walls of the church. Now, there's a couple components in the wall. There's the wall structure itself. There's the windows, and then there's doors. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the windows and doors so much right now. I just want to talk about the walls. Now, if we look at civilization, and if you look at the church structure itself, the basic unit of structure in any civilization, any church, is the family. Now, if you look at a regular 2x4 wood type of frame, there's like three structures or three components that make up a wall. There's the top beam, the bottom beam, and then the studs that go in between it. Now, I kind of look at the family as three components also. You have the father, you have the mother, and the children. Now, if you look at in Genesis, after the fall, God said that Adam would rule over his wife, and that she would have increased pain through childbirth. So it kind of gives a little picture of the family right there. So a normal family, in a well-functioning family, is going to have the father as the head of the family, and the mother the father will be over the mother, and then the mother is going to be over the children. Now, we look at men and women as kind of opposites, kind of like let's say in electricity, you got a positive and a negative. I guess like in an outlet and a plug, you have the male and the female parts of the plug there. So anyway, if you have the two, let's say you have the top beam and the bottom beam, the top being the man, the bottom being the woman, and then the studs in between are the children, you can see how the structure of the wall could be set up there. And there's a number of components. When you build walls for a building, let's say you have a regular house, okay? Now the walls have to be measured exact, okay? You can't make it too long, you can't make it too short, you can't make it too high, too low. The measurements got to be exact. Not only that, they have to be level. You don't want to have an uneven wall. It can't be crooked. It's got to be level and straight. And then the studs that are holding it up, they can't be crooked. They can't be offline. They have to be straight and just perfectly in line with the top and the bottom beams. Now that seems pretty simple, right? It doesn't seem like a hard task. But there has to be a lot of planning in something like that. You have to, the walls have to line up with the foundation. They have to be tied into the foundation by there's like bolts that are attached in the concrete. They go up through the wall there, and then they're screwed down and tightened. So The walls have to be straight. They have to be level. They have to be perpendicular. They have to be plumb also. And so I think that represents that if we look at relationships, okay, there needs to be a certain boundaries, like they have to be measured the right way. They can't be just haphazard. We have to have and society needs to set boundaries. It needs to set the right parameters for relationships. And when a society starts messing around with relationships between men and women and children, it throws the whole house into an uproar. That's why the whole United States, every kingdom, every empire, starting from Babylon, from Assyria, from Egypt, all the Middle Eastern countries, Persia, the Greeks, the Romans, they started at a certain level. And if they had a successful civilization, a successful family structure, they grew and they became a great country, a great nation. It wasn't by accident that Rome became a great empire. If you look at their family structure, they had a very strong family. And the father, he had like absolute control over his children and his wife. He could, if he owned a slave, he could kill that slave. He could order his children be killed. They would, lots of times, they would just expose the newborn babies. They would put them outside. And a lot of early Christians picked up these babies and would nurture them. But that's the kind of power that the father had in the Roman society. And I don't have a great knowledge of ancient civilizations, families, but I'm sure it's fairly similar to what I've read about the Roman family. Now, if you look at the American family, it was very strong. It started very strong, right with the Puritans and the Pilgrims, and this is a very it was a very important component of the growth of the United States, was the American family. But it wasn't necessarily just the American. I mean, it was the American family. Basically, most of the history comes from Europe, Northern Europe, and so this is just an offshoot of European families, and so anyway, so we got walls. When you put them up, they have to be straight, they have to be level, they have to be vertical, they have to be measured the right way. Now, another important thing is there has to be protection of the walls. Like if you make, let's say you put brick on the outside of it just to protect the walls, or if the walls were made out of stone, okay, they would be very weatherproof or whatever. A lot of buildings today, like in the United States, like let's say over the wooden studs, you would put siding, okay? So you have an outside shell that is protecting the walls, and inside the walls there's insulation, and also there's the different electrical parts. You have the drywall, all sorts of inside you have all sorts of stuff that you want to protect and keep safe and sound, and you know, insulate it, keep it warm, keep it dry. So I look at, if we're using the same analogy for a house being the structure of the church or a country, the outer skin, I would say, would be like the morality. That's what protects the family. Is society, when it says, okay, a woman, when a society protects our relationships and it protects our property. Yeah, for instance, like a young woman. Now, if a woman is like what's happened in our society, you have women or young girls that are having sex with young boys. The whole issue of virginity, to be a virgin when you're married, has just been abolished practically. And this is a horrible state of being for this country. Not only the whole issue of being a virgin has just been totally abandoned. I shouldn't say totally, but it's a small minority of people. I think it's like 5% of women. It's just a shockingly low number of people. And but it also, the whole idea of marriage, where it's not marriage by the state, but it's marriage through the church. Now the state's never defined what marriage is. It's always been through the church. You had, now in pagan societies, you had rituals or whatnot that define marriage, but in the United States, the church is what was the how do I say it? Okay, marriage is a sacrament. It's a sacred rite. It's a sacred thing, and that's why the church. That's why you have marriages in a church. That's why you're married by the minister. Now, when the state takes that away and people are married by a judge and you're not even married in a church, that's a huge difference in society. It's not a small deal. And so we have all these confusions as far as relationships between men and women in marriage. The whole idea of what role a man has in marriage or what role a woman has in marriage. The whole idea that women are out in the workforce, they're working and they're earning their own money. You have children that are getting, that are being educated by the state in public education, and you have the whole issue of family businesses. Now, it used to be we would have family farms or family businesses, but those are practically extinct in this country right now. There's very few family businesses, and this is a huge change as far as what our original country was, how it was founded. And you can see the effects of what's happened in the church also. The number of children, or the new generation going to church, it's just shrinking up and dying. It's not, the number of people, young people that are going to church is just shockingly small. So if this trend continues within 20 or 30 years, I mean, you're going to see most of the churches abandoned, kind of like what happened in England. I think you got like less than 5% of the population goes to church. And you can see what's happened to England. It's not a Christian country anymore. It's I I wouldn't even call the United States a Christian country at this point. Christians are definitely a minority in this country right now. It's much more secular, or I would call the religion in this country right now kind of a secular, kind of a patriotic religion. It's a kind of a worship of the state. And basically, it's a kind of a atheistic type of religion in practice, where God is not even mentioned, or it's not even part of public life, or even talking to people day to day, or even it has hardly any part in anybody's life, in most people's lives in the United States. So, trying to get back on track here about the family and it being the walls of the church or the walls of society. Now, if you look at the birth rate in the United States, in 1900, it was, what was it? It was about 30.1 per thousand. In 2009, it's 13.8. So it's about close to a third. It's about a 60% drop in the birth rate. If you look at the marriages, it's about the same thing. It's the percentage of people that are married is drastically dropped compared to what it was, last generation. So I don't see these kind of trends, which are not even being addressed by our government or any policymakers. Actually, they seem like they like this. They want this country to be like this. You're going to end up with a much different country than when I was a child. Basically, what we're going to end up with is an atheistic type of government, like the Soviet Union, which ends up always being a totalitarian type of government, which always ends up sending people to prison, and we got the largest prison population in the world right now. Or it turns into a police state. We're seeing police acting like the military right now, just abusing people. And we see Barack Obama, the president, just totally not even caring about other branches of government. He just does what he's going to do. He's like, by executive order, he's like saying that we can't have guns, or that they're going to change free speech rights. Alex Jones is really good about documenting all this. So anyway, you can't change a structure. You can't change the basic structure of a house that drastically and make it so it's not even, can't even support a structure without that structure falling down. Now, what's happened is that if the family structure is basically man, woman, and the children, and you have such drastic amounts of divorce, people living together, children ripped apart from their parents, and basically what's happened is the man has been replaced by the state. So if you let's say you take that top beam of the wall away, and let's say you just had a bottom beam and the studs. If you try and build a house without a top beam, I mean, that whole house is just going to fall to pieces. I don't even know how you could keep it together, And so that's kind of how I look at our society here in the United States is you've taken the beam of men and basically taken it out. And the walls will not, they're going to fall down. The roof's going to collapse. The whole thing's going to fall apart. Now, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen this next year. But it's going to happen eventually. You can't go this way in a society and not have it be affected that way. In the same way, in the church, now, I keep talking about our society and then the church, okay? I look at what's happening in our society and think this is not the direction we should be going. It's a really destructive, bad thing. But I look at the church and I think, okay, I'm not talking about the church of the United States right now. I mean, the church and the United States government is virtually the same. There's no difference. I'm talking about a church that an idealized church, I suppose. A church, an effective church. A church that Jesus Christ, that he made, okay? You know, Paul, he says that we're not to judge those outside the church, but we are supposed to judge those in the church. We have to have rule and authority over the church. And when the church in the United States has become so much like the state, you have the church, the same amount of divorce as the probably more divorce in the church than there is in the world, right? That's a huge problem. That to me shows me that the church in the United States is absolutely failing. And I don't think it's lack of trying, because I think there's many people that have really tried, really worked on this, but we have to look at what is causing the church to fall apart, even though people have been striving, really trying to work on this, trying to work on relationships, marriage retreats, all these things, and they're not working. Well, maybe the reason it's not working, maybe all these years that Focus on the Family was talking, maybe there's a reason why it's not working. So I think it has to do with the church taking responsibility for marriage, for the family, for children, for education. We don't need to look to the state to do all these things. As a matter of fact, the state is fighting against these things. The state is not our friend. The state has become our enemy. Every day we hear attacks against Christians. Every day we hear Christians denigrated, put down, acted like the enemy. I mean, I feel like what happened to the Jews in Germany, how they were put down so much by Hitler. Well, if a society is marginalizing a group so much, eventually they're going to come around to killing those groups. They're going to there's going to be a slaughter of that people. So anyway, I don't know if there's much that we can do in this country at this point. People have been fighting against this as hard as they can. You know, not everybody. I'm not saying everybody. But I'd say most of the church is not awake to these things. I think most people feel kind of uncomfortable and don't feel good about what's going on, but they don't know what the solution is. But I think it's almost too late at this point. I don't know if there's much that can be done at this point. And I hope there is. I hope, people are fighting this. I hope we can turn it around. But I'm not so optimistic at this point. So anyway, this is my vision for the church at this point. I'm just talking about the walls of the church, talking about the family, how it forms the main structure of the church. And this is Liberty Mark 222. Thanks. Bye.